If you have not bet on Kansas City to have a three-peat, you better hurry up. Time is running out. Hello, welcome to NFL Picks and Predictions, Week 15, and you know what that means. It is Week 15, and what is Patrick Mahomes' number? 15. So, I gotta say, that was very interesting. A lot of games that happened last week. I know I was wrong about Buffalo winning, but they still kept it very close with the Los Angeles Rams. And to be honest, the Rams needed that game more than Buffalo because Buffalo has secured the AFC East. Los Angeles, on the other hand, they are fighting with all of the other teams in the NFC West to win the division. But that division is still anyone's game. All of the teams do have a pathway to winning the division and going to the playoffs, and they know that only the winning team will get to advance to the playoffs. Seattle is standing at 8-5, so it is possible that if one of the other teams happens to win more games than Seattle or happens to break a tie with Seattle, Seattle wins one or two more games and still loses the division, they still have the opportunity to be a wild card. So Los Angeles, they knew that they needed that game, and they definitely responded. I know people are being like, oh, Buffalo screwed up, but I really don't think they did, because based on the numbers, based on the passing yards and the touchdowns, those are winning statistics for a football game that Buffalo played great. It's just the Los Angeles offense was unstoppable. That was the offense we were seeing in the 2021 season where the Rams went on to win the Super Bowl. And if the Rams brought that offense to every game, they would go back to the Super Bowl this season. But the NFC is definitely a lot more competitive for them this season. They don't really have the offense that they had that season, plus some other teams that weren't as hot that season are playing better, such as Philadelphia and Detroit. So there's a lot more that goes into that, and we'll probably discuss it a little bit more as we get into all the games for this week. We are getting closer and closer to the postseason, and some teams we already know are going to make it or aren't going to make the playoffs, but then there's some that are still pretty tight, and definitely really exciting to watch. There are going to be some of those exciting games this week. And we will start off with the Thursday night football game for the week, which is going to be one of those exciting games. On Thursday night, we have Los Angeles Rams and San Francisco 49ers. Both teams need this game to keep their chances alive at winning the NFC West. So San Francisco obviously needs it more because they're sitting at 6-7 right now. Los Angeles needs this game just to tie up the number of wins Seattle has so far, and then Seattle would have to lose for this week. Some interesting scenarios there, but I do think that if Los Angeles loses and Seattle loses, it's not over. And San Francisco wins, that just makes the division more competitive. But if Los Angeles wins the game, then it is all but over for San Francisco at that point, because Seattle and Los Angeles will have a commanding lead over them at that point. Now, for this game, San Francisco is the favorite. Point spread for them is -2.5. I know people are saying the last game, when San Francisco played Los Angeles beat them. But think about it. San Francisco was ahead almost the whole game. They let Los Angeles sneak up on them towards the end of the game, and they happened to get a big break with a pass interference penalty on San Francisco towards the end of the game, which put Los Angeles in field goal range to kick the game-winning field goal. Also keep in mind, San Francisco was playing at SoFi, but now Los Angeles is playing at Levi's. And I think San Francisco will be more comfortable since they have home field advantage. And I think even without Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason, San Francisco was still able to have a great offense with last week's game versus Chicago. And I think they can bring a lot of that offense back on the field this week. Keep in mind, Los Angeles has been getting more competitive the last few weeks. They saw how their season started out slow when their wide receivers were out for a few weeks, but they are definitely making up for it. They know how much they need to win these games, that they cannot screw up at all. And they definitely brought to the field exactly what they needed against Buffalo. Now, if they bring that to the field with San Francisco, they'll definitely beat them here, just like they did Buffalo. However, I think that it will not be as easy for Los Angeles since they are not playing at SoFi this week. And just one of those divisional statistics I've noticed, San Francisco consistently beats Los Angeles. I know that they screwed up the last time they played Los Angeles, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that game was pretty much just a fluke. Even the 2021 season, where Los Angeles went on to win the Super Bowl, San Francisco still beat them both times they played them during the regular season. I also know that San Francisco is not happy that they messed up against Los Angeles last time they played, so they are coming back for revenge, and I think they will play harder because of that. So for this game, as far as who gets the win, I'm going to have to go with San Francisco. I think that they will be able to tie up their record for the season at 7-7 and at least keep the NFC West competitive. Of course, they will have to count on Seattle losing this week to at least keep the division more competitive, because if Seattle wins and they go to 9-5, that will still give them that commanding lead. And it's getting to this point to where once a team starts to have that commanding lead, that division is all but theirs. Seattle gets 9 wins, they have all but won the division. They reach 10 wins, they're definitely going to the playoffs. So, gonna be a great game to watch. I would be perfectly fine going point spread on San Francisco since it is minus 2.5, because they win by a field goal. Guess what? They cover the spread, and hey, last time Los Angeles won by a field goal, so could be the opposite, or maybe San Francisco could win by more, but both teams know how much they have to win this game. But I think this will be another game where San Francisco beats Los Angeles like they normally do. So moving on to the Sunday games, we've got Baltimore Ravens and New York Giants. Baltimore is a huge favorite to win this game. Point spread for them is minus 14.5. The last game Baltimore played against Philadelphia, that was probably one of the best games of the week. We know it could have gone either way, but Philadelphia came out. They showed them who's boss. And I know Baltimore was not too happy with that loss. However, I wouldn't necessarily say it was an embarrassing loss, like when Baltimore lost to Las Vegas or when they lost to Cleveland, because they did lose to one of the top teams in the NFL. There wasn't a lot to be upset about other than, hey, we couldn't beat them, but they definitely have to win this game against the Giants, and I think they will definitely have the opportunity to do that. The only thing I've noticed is that Baltimore's had some losses to teams that are not seen as that good. They have sometimes kept the door open towards the end of the game for the other team to at least catch up, if not win. And I think it's very possible that that could happen in this game. Will the Giants beat them? Probably not. However, since the point spread is so wide for this game, if we go point spread on New York, which is plus 14.5, Baltimore could still win by 2 touchdowns. We still cover the spread. And honestly, I think the game will be closer than that. I was right about the last game with the Giants, how they actually did cover the spread against New Orleans. They did lose by 3 points, but New Orleans did not cover the point spread. And the Giants definitely had the opportunity to win that game, but they blew it. So, of course, Baltimore will probably be a lot harder to play than New Orleans. So they could easily lose by more than a field goal, or Baltimore is coming off of a bye week. They could very well come back and blow up the scoreboard like they did against one of the games Buffalo has lost this season. It's very possible, and we will definitely know more after the game on Sunday. But as far as who gets the win for the game, regardless of the score, I'm going to have to go with Baltimore. I do not think that they will cover the spread. They will have to win by more than 2 touchdowns. I just don't see that happening. But I think they can still hold off the Giants because they know how much they have to win this game. And it doesn't matter if it's by a field goal or 3 touchdowns, a win's a win. I think Baltimore will go to 9-5 and be a lot closer to securing a wild card spot in the playoffs, because even though they still have a chance to win the AFC North, I really think that Pittsburgh's got it at this point. It's theirs to lose. They have a commanding lead, and time is running out for Baltimore to catch up this season. They've just had way too many vulnerabilities. So while they are probably going to be a playoff team, they are not going to be the team that we saw last season, where Baltimore actually got the number one seed in the AFC. But I think they can win this game Sunday, at least go to 9-5, and stay in a comfortable position to be a wild card in the AFC for the playoffs. So then we've got New York Jets and Jacksonville Jaguars. New York is the favorite. Point spread for them is -3.5. This game right here is a race for the bottom. Both teams know that they're done for this season. However, Jacksonville with Mac Jones, they're not playing great, but he has pulled out some surprises towards the end of the game. Like 2 weeks ago, Mac Jones pulls out 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and gets very close to beating Houston. And then last week, even though I thought Tennessee would end up winning the game, both teams weren't doing well offensively, but Mac Jones was able to score that touchdown in the fourth quarter. Although the final score was only 10-6, they still got the win last week. This week, I think it will be similar to that. Now, the New York Jets have not been playing awful. In fact, early on in the games, they might be ahead. They might have leads, but then they end up screwing up in the fourth quarter like the last couple of weeks. They were ahead of Seattle for a while, but then Seattle really got them in the fourth quarter, ended up winning, I believe, 26-21. And then the last game against Miami, I was correct about Miami winning, but New York definitely kept it close, sent it to overtime. Of course, Miami scored that winning touchdown, but it's still a very good game to watch. But at the end of the day, I think this game will be a repeat of almost all the previous games New York has had this season. I really think that the Jets will play like the Jets. Not only that, Jacksonville has home field advantage, and I think that will help them out. So, at the end of the day, I would say in the lease, go point spread on Jacksonville, which is +3.5, because I think if the Jets happen to win the game, they probably will only win by a field goal. But I just really think that the Jets will not win the game. They are going to keep losing. So, I know that New York's the favorite, but I don't care. I don't see them winning. I'm going with Jacksonville on this game. I think they will go to 4-10 and at least tell the Jets, hey, maybe we're not a great team, but we're not as bad as you. That's really what it all comes down to. So then we've got Dallas Cowboys and Carolina Panthers. So for this game, if you were watching this 1 or 2 seasons ago, you would think that Dallas would be the favorite. But they are not really having the season that they wanted. They're not having the season that a lot of fans expected after seeing how good of a record they had the previous 3 seasons. And Carolina has actually been playing better the last few weeks, even though they haven't been winning. They've definitely been outperforming expectations. So Carolina is the favorite for this game. Point spread for them is -2.5. With the improvement I have seen from Bryce Young, I could easily see Carolina trampling Dallas. They also have home field advantage, or it could be a little bit more competitive. It could be a one-score game too, but since the point spread for Carolina is -2.5, they could win by a field goal. We cover the spread, which I really think that Dallas, they might actually play better than what people are expecting because for some reason Dallas has done better on the road this season than at home. So when you factor that in, this game could easily be a toss-up. Because if you think about the game from week 12, where Dallas played Washington, and Washington was expected to beat them by double digits, but then Dallas ended up beating them and surprised a lot of people. If you would bet money line on Dallas for that game, you would have had a pretty good payout. And for this game, Dallas could pull off some miracle, but I just really think that the offense that Carolina has had the last few games is going to show up this game. It will definitely be fun to watch. It's probably a toss-up, but I'm going to have to go with Carolina on this one. I think the offense we've been seeing from them the last few games will show up on Sunday, and even though they were playing better the last few games, they still fell short. They still lost the games by 1 score. I mean, they did keep it very competitive with Philadelphia last week, which I'm mad I did not bet point spread on Carolina for that game. So I think they will continue to play as good as they have been. And even though they fell short the last few weeks, I think that they will get the W on Sunday. So then we've got Washington Commanders and New Orleans Saints. Washington is the favorite. Point spread for them is -7. So I could easily see Washington winning this game by a touchdown. Now, as I mentioned, Washington had that embarrassing loss in Week 12 to Dallas. However, this week, they're coming off of a bye week, and I think they will be playing better. They could easily cover the spread. New Orleans, I wouldn't say that they're playing great right now, and I understand. I think they switched coaches. Derek Carr is questionable. Taysom Hill's out for the season. So, New Orleans has definitely had a lot of problems to deal with. Not all of it is their fault, but this just hadn't been their season. And not only that, they were in a position to lose the game last week against the New York Giants, but the Giants pretty much just let them win, just like they kind of let Dallas win on the Thanksgiving game. So for this game, I don't know if New Orleans will play bad. I don't know who their quarterback will be, but either way, I still think they're going to struggle, and at this point, they know their season is over, so they pretty much know their season's over. So maybe they'll play a little bit better since they're not under as much pressure. But at the end of the day, Washington, they know how important it is for them to win this game because earlier in the season, they were leading the NFC East, but then Philadelphia started coming out playing better. Washington was struggling a few games, and now they have fallen into the number 7 seed in the NFC for the playoffs. So they were looking pretty good for maybe the number 5 seed. Right now, they are trying hard just to stay in that number 7 seed for the NFC. And I think when you also factor that in, they will be playing harder. I think they can easily hold off New Orleans. I don't know if they can cover the spread. So if you want to do a small amount of chips on Washington for point spread, I'd say that would be a pretty good bet. But at the end of the day, as far as who's getting the win, I'm going to have to go with Washington on this one. I think they will go to 9-5 and definitely be in a more comfortable position to be a wild card spot in the playoffs because Philadelphia has all but won the NFC East. Sorry, Washington. You might get to the playoffs, but you're not winning the division this season. So then we've got Cincinnati Bengals and Tennessee Titans. Cincinnati is the favorite. Point spread for them is -5. I actually thought Tennessee would beat Jacksonville last week, seeing that they had home field advantage and that Jacksonville was kind of in shock after Trevor Lawrence got a season-ending injury. Jacksonville was still able to hold off Tennessee last week, and Tennessee has been playing like garbage this season. I'm almost wondering if they really are trying to lose at this point, so they get earlier draft picks. Cincinnati, mathematically, they could still get a wild card spot in the playoffs, but they will need so many miracles for that to happen. It's just not going to. So their season is over, and I think they pretty much know it. As far as it goes for this game, Tennessee could come out and they could surprise them. The deal is, with Tennessee, you have to help them win the game. They can't just win on their offense alone. The defense can also play a part, as it did when Tennessee beat Houston in Week 12. Now, for this game, Cincinnati has played decent among bad teams this season. It has been the mediocre teams and the good teams where they still don't play horrible, but they just fall short of the W. So seeing that they're playing a bad team, they may or may not cover the point spread. They could only win by a field goal. So if you want to do a small bet on point spread for Tennessee, that would not be a bad bet. But at the end of the day, I think it could be competitive. I think the Bengals can hold off the Titans. So as far as who's getting the win, I'm going with Cincinnati on this one. I think Cincinnati will go to 6-8 on Sunday, and it won't really mean much, but they could just say, hey, we don't have a horrible record this season. So then we've got Kansas City Chiefs and Cleveland Browns. Kansas City is the favorite. Point spread for them is -4.5. I am actually kind of surprised how close the odds are for this game, because Cleveland hasn't been a good team this season. And I know part of that had to do with Deshaun Watson wasn't being a great quarterback, and now that they've got Jameis Winston, he's playing better, and I know a lot of Cleveland fans are saying, hey, if Jameis Winston was with Cleveland the whole season, they'd have a much better record, and it is very possible, and we will definitely see more of that on Sunday. Kansas City has not covered the point spread the last few games. They have won, but they do not blow up the scoreboard, and they have not won by the expected margins. They could easily cover the point spread this game. I know that a lot of teams have been able to hold off Cleveland easily, and I do think that Kansas City will come out. They will do whatever they can to win the game. I was kind of surprised Carolina kept it close in week 12, but Kansas City still had that game winning drive at the end that helped them get the game winning field goal. Same thing as what happened when the Los Angeles Chargers made the game more competitive in the second half. Kansas City was still able to get that game winning drive. Mahomes was able to do his magic, go down the field, and get the team within field goal range to end up winning the game because, as I've said before, it doesn't matter what the margin is, a win's a win, and I think they can easily do a repeat of that on Sunday. It could come down to a one-score game. I don't know how Cleveland's going to play, but just because Kansas City has not been doing well about covering the point spread most of the season, I would not bet point spread on Kansas City. But they could end up scoring a lot this game. So for that reason, I wouldn't bet point spread on Cleveland either. But as far as who's getting the win, I'm hands down going with Kansas City on this game. I would go moneyline Kansas City, and I will definitely go a high number of chips because I know that they're going to win this game. The Los Angeles Chargers are definitely more competitive than Cleveland, so if Kansas City could hold off Los Angeles, they can easily hold off Cleveland. So then we've got Miami Dolphins and Houston Texans. Houston is the favorite. Point spread for them is -2.5. Houston is coming off of the bye week. And they did struggle the last two games, but those were against Tennessee and Jacksonville, two division rivals they should have easily held off. But they lost to Tennessee, and they barely beat Jacksonville. So Miami, we can argue, has been playing better the last few weeks now that they've got their team back in gear, now that Tua's back in the game. And for that reason, I kind of think that Miami has a very good chance at winning this game. However, Houston is coming off the bye week, so they could come out and play better. It might help that they got that week off. Now they're like all ready to go. It's possible that them struggling the last two games was just them wearing out. So we'll see what happens after Houston comes off the bye week, if they're going to still be struggling or if they're going to be playing like the Houston team a lot of people expected from them going into this season. Now, I've said from the beginning of the season, Houston is being overestimated this season. Do not expect them to have all these incredible wins. They surprised a lot of people last season. This season, the other teams are ready for it. Miami knows that they've got to win this game to just stay in the hunt for the playoffs. Houston knows they got to win the game to at least keep a commanding lead over Indianapolis and the AFC South. As far as the level of importance for winning this game, Miami does need it more than Houston, and I think for that, Miami is going to be a lot more competitive in this game. So, as far as who's getting the win, I'm going with Miami on this one. I think they will go to 7-7 and at least stay in the hunt for the playoffs. Mathematically, they still have a chance, but just like Cincinnati, they will need some miracles to happen to get one of those wild card spots in the AFC. So moving on to the afternoon games, we've got Indianapolis Colts and Denver Broncos. Denver is the favorite. Point spread for them is -4. This will also be an interesting game to watch because Indianapolis is coming off of a bye week. We'll see if they're playing better, but then Denver, they're also coming off a bye week. Denver wasn't playing bad. The last game they had against Cleveland is just Cleveland was keeping it competitive. They definitely made them work for that win. Could Indianapolis make them work for the win? I would think so. I think it'll be competitive. I think it'll be fun to watch, but both teams need this game. Indianapolis needs it a little bit more because Denver currently has the number 6 or the number 7 seed in the AFC, and Indianapolis is just in the hunt. So Indianapolis needs to win this game to just stay in the hunt, but Denver needs this game too. They're currently tied with Baltimore and the Los Angeles Chargers for the wild card spots in the playoffs because they are all currently 8-5. So Denver wins this game, that will definitely put them in a more comfortable position to be a wild card spot in the playoffs. I'm really looking forward to this game. Since the point spread for Denver is -4, I probably would not take the point spread because Denver could easily win by a field goal and we still don't win the money. So I wouldn't really take the point spreads on this game. I would just go straight up money line. But as far as who's going to get the win, it may or may not be competitive. I think Bo Nix will put on a good offense with Denver, but I'm not sure what kind of offense Indianapolis will bring to the field. But as far as who's getting the win, I'm going to have to go with Denver on this one. They will be able to go to 9-5, and I think they will all but secure a wild card spot in the AFC for the playoffs. So then we've got New England Patriots and Arizona Cardinals. Arizona is the favorite. Point spread for them is -4.5. Now, Arizona knows that they really need this game to at least keep the NFC West competitive for them. If they lose this game and go to 6-8, that's definitely not going to put them in a good position, especially knowing that Los Angeles or San Francisco, whoever wins, that is not going to put them in a good position to win the division. And they lose this game, I'd say their chances of winning the NFC West are all but over. New England, sure, they could try to win this game to mess up Arizona's chances of going to the playoffs, but I just don't think New England's going to play that great. New England's team has just fallen apart. They don't really know what to do with themselves right now. They fired Belichick, for crap's sake. New England may still put some points on the board, but they may not play horrible. But I think Arizona, they're going to come out. They're going to show the offense that they tried to bring last week when Seattle played them. They may or may not cover the point spread, but as far as who is getting the win, I'm going to go with Arizona on this one. I think they will be able to tie up their record at 7-7 and at least keep the NFC West competitive to where we are all on pins and needles for who is going to win that division. So then we've got Buffalo Bills and Detroit Lions. Detroit is the favorite. Point spread is -1.5. I really feel like this will be the game of the week because we've got two of the top teams playing against each other right now. The fact that Buffalo is 2 wins behind Kansas City right now pretty much tells them that it's very unlikely that they will be able to get the number 1 seed in the AFC at this point. Kansas City has all but secured that. In fact, I would go as far to say they have already secured the number 1 seed. If there was any game that they were going to lose in the season, it would be to Buffalo, which they did lose it, but all the other games they've won, and I think the rest of the games they will win. Maybe not the final game with Denver, just because they'll probably be at 15-1 going into the last week of the NFL, and at that point, they'll probably have Carson Wentz as their starting quarterback, and if they happen to lose the game, it's like, whatever, we got the number 1 seed. Kind of like when they got the number 1 seed in the 2020 season, and in their final game of the season against the Los Angeles Chargers, they kind of just let them win because, like, hey, it doesn't make a difference. But with that being said, Buffalo could keep it competitive. It all depends on if they show up, what they bring to the field. Detroit does have home field advantage, and Buffalo knows that it's going to be very difficult for them to get the number 1 seed in the AFC at this point, especially after that loss to Los Angeles last week, which really wasn't all their fault. As I said, Buffalo was playing great. It's just the offense for Los Angeles was on fire. Now, Detroit, though, they really need this game not only to be in a better position to win the AFC North, but also to keep that top seed in the NFC. Now, Detroit's been having some really close wins the last few games, and this could easily be a 1-score game as well. We know that both teams are going to bring whatever offense they can to the field. Seeing that Detroit does have home field advantage, we know that Dan Campbell is really going to be pulling out the stops for this. He knows if Detroit loses this game, that they could easily be overtaken by Minnesota or Philadelphia for the top seed in the NFC, and also be overtaken in the NFC North, which we know that they want home field advantage in the playoffs and are trying all they can to get that top seed in the NFC and get the bye week for the first week in the postseason. So, with that being said, it's definitely going to probably be the best game of the week. But as far as who is getting the W, I think it'll be close, but I'm going with Detroit on this game. Since the point spread for them is only -1.5, they've had plenty of games where they've won by a field goal. I would be more than comfortable with taking point spread for Detroit this game. But yeah, you want to go point spread or money line for Detroit, I'd say that would be a pretty good bet. I would say at most on this game, bet a medium number of chips for Detroit. So then we've got Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Los Angeles Chargers. Los Angeles is the favorite. Point spread for them is -3. So Los Angeles definitely kept the game with Kansas City very competitive. It's just Kansas City works their magic with Patrick Mahomes in the fourth quarter, and it doesn't matter what the score is, they will find a way to win. Now, luckily, it will probably be a lot easier for Los Angeles to play Tampa than Kansas City. Not only that, Los Angeles has home field advantage. They will be more comfortable at SoFi than they were last week at Arrowhead. And Tampa has been playing better too. They know they need these games to keep their chances at winning the NFC South alive. And since Atlanta has been slipping the last few weeks, that definitely opened the door for Tampa to catch up, and now they are actually leading the division. If they win this game, I'll definitely put them in a better spot to win the NFC South. But also, if Atlanta wins too, that doesn't necessarily give them a commanding lead. But either way, both teams really need this game. Tampa needs it to keep their chances alive at winning the NFC South. Los Angeles needs it to keep their chances alive at being a wildcard spot in the AFC. Right now, they are tied with Baltimore and Denver for those wildcard spots. They're all tied at 8-5. So Los Angeles knows if they win this game and they go to 9-5, that will definitely put them in a better position, especially if Baltimore or Denver loses. But odds are Baltimore is going to win this week, regardless of what happens with Denver. So they know for sure they've got to win this game to at least be tied with Baltimore in the AFC. For this game, I think it will be competitive. I think it will come close, probably come down to one score. But I think at the end of the day, Los Angeles will be more comfortable playing at SoFi Stadium. I think Jim Harbaugh can bring a lot of great plays to the field. So for this game, I'm going to go with Los Angeles. I think if you want to bet a small number of chips on point spread for Los Angeles, I say go for it. They could easily win by a field goal. They could win by more than that, all depending on whether or not Tampa shows up. I do not see Los Angeles blowing up the scoreboard, but I do think they can edge out the win. So then we've got Pittsburgh Steelers and Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia is the favorite. Point spread for them is -5. Both these teams have been doing really good this season. Philadelphia is the favorite. They have home field advantage. They have been playing really good. They did struggle against Carolina, so I don't know what that would say with Pittsburgh, because I'm pretty sure Pittsburgh will be a lot more competitive against Philadelphia than Carolina. For that, this will definitely be a great game. I do think that Pittsburgh may not play bad, but I just think Philadelphia, they will play better. They will be more competitive. As long as Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley are doing well, I think there will be no stopping them. It could come down to one score, so for that reason, I would maybe only bet a small number of chips on point spread for Philadelphia. But at the end of the day, for this game, I'm going to have to go with Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia will pull off the win, go to 12-2, and be knocking on the door with Detroit for that number 1 seat, depending on if Detroit wins. It is really a huge fight right now for that number 1 seed in the NFC for the playoffs. So moving on to the Sunday night game, we've got Green Bay Packers and Seattle Seahawks. Green Bay is the favorite. Point spread for them is -3. So Green Bay has been playing pretty good. Even though they did lose the game last week against Detroit, they did keep it very competitive. And when Dan Campbell makes those plays for Detroit, where they're gambling on fourth down, they don't always pay off. And there were at least 2 turnovers for Detroit last game that Green Bay definitely took advantage of. Seattle does have home field advantage this game, and I would say that they have been playing better the last few weeks. Like most Sunday night games, it will be a great game, and I think it will be competitive. As far as it goes for this game, though, since Seattle has home field advantage, I think they will be able to play pretty good. I think they will keep it more competitive than a lot of Green Bay fans think it will be. And as far as it goes for who's getting the win, this game is definitely a toss-up. But I'm actually going with Seattle on this game. I think that they will be improving their play as they have been the previous few weeks. I think Green Bay won't play horrible, but I just do not think they can hold off Seattle this game. It still doesn't mean their playoff chances are over, but it would definitely put Seattle in a much better position to win the NFC West. It's so funny. Early on in the season, Seattle was doing good. I was like, oh, the NFC West is theirs to lose. But then they start playing bad. They're losing a few games. I'm like, oh, that division could go to anybody now. But now they're definitely playing better, and I think they will be able to bring that to Lumen Field on Sunday night. So moving on to Monday's games, we've got Chicago Bears and Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota's the favorite. Point spread for them is -7. So we've got a division rivalry right here. And even though Chicago was starting to play better and had some games where they kept it competitive but still barely lost, last week against San Francisco, they really didn't have much going for them. And I also think San Francisco was trying to answer for that embarrassing loss they had against Buffalo the previous week. It is very possible Chicago could keep it competitive. They could narrowly lose, so may not be a horrible idea to go point spread on Chicago. Now, as far as going point spread on Minnesota, they could easily win by a touchdown if they play the way they did against Atlanta last week, especially in that fourth quarter. And I think it will be about just as competitive as it was against Atlanta last week, or a little bit easier. I think worst case scenario for Minnesota is that playing Chicago will be just as competitive as it was against Atlanta. I don't think it will be more competitive. Now, I'm not sure if they can blow up the scoreboard like they did with Atlanta, because a lot of that had to do with the turnovers Atlanta's been having. They've been having way too many of those, which has really cost them the last couple of games. This game may or may not be competitive. If you want to go point spread on either team, it would not be a horrible bet. I would just only do a small number of chips. As far as who's going to get the win for this game, I'm going with Minnesota. I think that Minnesota will keep playing like they have been. They do have home field advantage, and I think they will be able to go to 12-2 on Monday, and they'll definitely be knocking on the door with Detroit for the NFC North and possibly the number one seed. I just do not see Minnesota getting the number one seed. It's very possible that I really think that if Detroit does not get the number one seed in the NFC, it will be Philadelphia. But Minnesota, I know mathematically they have not clinched a playoff berth, but even if they lose the game and go to 11-3, they will still get a wild card spot in the playoffs. The question is, which one are they going to get? So, final game of the week, we've got Atlanta Falcons and Las Vegas Raiders. Atlanta is the favorite. Point spread for them is -4.5. Las Vegas, their season's a done deal. They have one of the worst records of any team this season. And if they lose the game, go to 2-12, guess what? Puts them in a much better position on the lineup for draft picks the following season. I think the way a lot of Raiders fans feel is just keep losing the rest of the season and then hopefully play better the following season. That's really the best they could hope for at this point. Atlanta still has a chance at winning the NFC South, and they know they need this game to at least keep their chances alive at winning the division, because if Tampa wins and they lose, their season is all but over. If they win and Tampa loses, guess what? They're tied back up 7-7, and I believe Atlanta would get the tiebreaker for that division. They know that they need this game more than ever. They've got to stop with all those turnovers. Kirk Cousins has been throwing way too many interceptions. Since they're playing the Raiders, you would think, at the surface, it would be so easy to beat them. If Atlanta keeps having those turnovers, Las Vegas could easily sneak up on them and win. They definitely will take advantage of those turnovers, which is how they were able to keep the game with Tampa last week very competitive, at least in the first half. As long as Atlanta can keep their offense in good shape and be able to hold on to the ball, I think they can easily hold off Las Vegas. So I'm going with Atlanta on this game. Because the point spread is -4.5, they may or may not cover the point spread, but just seeing the way they've been playing lately, I would not bet on them to win by 5 points. They may not even win the game at all. They probably won't play great, but they will play good enough to get the win on Monday. So those are my picks and predictions for NFL Week 15. Let me know what you think, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next video for NFL picks and predictions. My name is Napoleon, and I'm in the closet. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe so you're always notified when we produce new content on this channel, and I will see you in the next video.